Gallatin County to Scott County, we're your home for country favorites. 95.3 WIKI, Carrollton, Madison.
The following program is paid for by the Rick and Rick at Night Show.
Hello, Ohio River Valley. This is Rick and Rick at Night. We're the voice of liberty here in the Ohio River Valley. I'm Rick Roos. My partner Rick Berry and I are delighted to be here once again. How are you, Bulldog?
Hey, I'm doing great, Rick. I'm really excited about our guest tonight, I'll tell you that.
We'd like to shout out to and express our true thanks to our friend Doc and DuPont and so many others who have served our country so valiantly. This is Rick and Rick, the voice of liberty in Ohio River Valley. And Rick, we have a very special guest.
Yes, we do, Rick. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. David Limbaugh. David is a lawyer, a nationally syndicated columnist with Creator Syndicate, a political commentator, and author of 5, now we can say 5, New York Times bestsellers: Absolute Power, Persecution, Bankrupt, Crimes Against Liberties, and The Great Destroyer. The brother of radio talk show host Rush Limbaugh. He lives in Cape Girardeau, Missouri with his wife and I believe 5 children. You can follow him on Twitter at David Limbaugh. David, are you there?
Yes, sir. How are you guys?
Hey, David, doing great. We're both big fans. I read your columns every week. I think sometimes you do them twice a week. I want to say, David, out here in Indiana, we are big Peyton Manning fans. And when it comes to the NFL, the Manning brothers are tops in the NFL as far as brothers go, but in political commentary, the Limbaugh brothers are number 1 in the country with political commentary and carrying the conservative banner. David, you've got a book out, The Great Destroyer, and I've had the pleasure of reading most of it. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and, who the Great Destroyer is?
Yes, I thank you for your kind words. I don't hold a candle to Rush, but I do my small part, and I appreciate you saying that. I wrote a book called Crimes Against Liberty in the summer of 2010, and it chronicled Obama's actions in office from his inauguration until about the summer of 2010. In this book, The Great Destroyer, I picked up where Crimes Against Liberty left off, and I carry forward the history, and it's a comprehensive history of everything Obama's done. Pretty much everything he's done in office. It's a 400-page book with about 1,300 footnotes. So I cover the gamut. My goal was to have between 2 covers as comprehensive and thorough an account as I possibly could so that people could see it all in one place and be shocked and outraged to the 10th degree and understand exactly how grave a situation our nation is in and how imperative it is that we oust this guy in November.
Well, David, more than anything, this really is a history book, and we've seen a lot of revisionist history occurring. I'm glad we have this book. Hopefully, they won't be burning it here in a couple years. But I want to tell you, I started reading it a couple weeks ago, and I'm a little ticked at you because there were so many things that happened that I forgot, and I was reading all this stuff. Oh yeah, I remember him doing that, and I remember this happening, and it all came back to me. It's an accumulation of hundreds of things taken as a whole that really is destroying our country.
Yeah, that really was what I set out to do, and I did do it. And it's kind of sometimes it's intense. And it's dense because there are so many things, but I hope it's readable. But I do include as many things as I could. I got to the end, and I told my editor, I had 12,000 file folders, 12,000 files in about 57 folders, and I wanted to cover everything. And I got to the end, and I thought, man, there's still some stuff I haven't covered. He says, well, you still got an introduction to do. So I started the introduction, and instead of making it just a glorified column like introductions usually are, I did that, but I also threw in the kitchen sink with the remainder of his abuses in bullet point form because I wanted to stay true to my commitment and my promise to make this a comprehensive account of what he's done.
The book, I'll tell you, David, it's an easy read for the people out there that are thinking about buying the book. It's a very easy read. Every chapter is a war on something different that this administration has brought about onto the citizenry. We've got you for 15 minutes, and I would like probably the most important chapter to me would be the war on the economy. That seems to be number one consideration on everybody's minds right now. Give us some examples of what has happened, going back 3.5 years to now, that is devastating our economy?
Obama, as you know, told us that if we passed his $868 billion stimulus package, unemployment would remain below 8% by the end of 2010. As it turned out, it skyrocketed and went above 8%, got up to 10%, stayed between 9 and 10 for the longest time, then finally went down a little above 8. It's never gone below 8 as far as I know. He has utterly failed in that promise. And his response has been he wants to spend more money, $50 billion for high-speed rail, for other infrastructure improvements, after cynically admitting that when he promised he had shovel-ready jobs, he actually didn't. Then he wanted $447 billion for a jobs program, which was just another stimulus junior. He has no other ideas up his sleeve other than to spend borrowed money so he can redistribute the wealth of hard-earned wealth of producers to people he wants to distribute it to, and also buy votes and further ingratiating himself to the dependency class. He's expanded the welfare state. He reversed welfare reform by taking out the work requirement just recently. He's incentivized states to expand the food stamp program. He extends unemployment benefits as long as he can, claiming both the expansion of the food stamp program and extending unemployment benefits actually creates a multiplier effect and creates jobs. Creates more jobs than Keystone will, he said, preposterously. I mean, it's amazing what this guy believes. And so now he's accumulated $5 trillion plus of debt in his 3 years, which is as much as Bush did in his 8 years, which is nothing to be proud of on Bush's part. And
right.
He's on record to do $6 trillion before the end of his first term. His budget, his 10-year budget, shows when he claims to be stabilizing spending, he's adding more than $1 trillion in deficits each year, $1 trillion to the debt every year for the next 10 years. And if interest rates go up at all to reasonable rates, they're artificially low now, it'll be another $5 to $10 trillion more debt he'll be adding. We have $120 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Obama refuses to come to the table. He wouldn't even meet with, much less adopt any of the recommendations of, the Bipartisan Budget Commission. He scoffed at Ryan's plan. He's demagogued and demonized and vilified Ryan for coming up with a plan. And we now face going into a situation like Greece has gone into in the next 2 or 3 years if we don't reform our entitlements, and yet Obama stands in the breach and refuses to reform entitlements and just criticizes Republicans, and he says, I don't like your plan. And Ryan said to Tim Geithner, Secretary of the Treasury, in Congress, why don't you come up with some kind of plan? Well, we don't like your plan. What are you, 2 years old? Give us your plan. Your Senate hasn't passed a budget for 1,100 plus days. You haven't come up with any reform plan on entitlement. You refuse to cut spending at a rate that's to anywhere close to sustainable. This is national financial suicide, and you refuse to let the Republicans put on the brakes. You don't put on the brakes, and we're going over the cliff. And you're basically laughing about it. This is the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. It's the most preventable, predictable financial catastrophe in world history, according to Paul Ryan, and Obama insists on letting it play out. It amazes me that he gets 5 voters to vote for it.
David, I have watched you so many times on TV, and this is why I was excited to have you on. You get so passionate. You care about your country so much. Just the tone of your voice, we can tell how much you care and love your country and how disgusted you are with things that don't really have to be the way they are. And, that's why we're so happy to have you on.
Well, and the other thing about it, David, Rush, I've been a Rush newsletter subscriber forever, since the first one, and he rightly called it a compendium, and I have to agree with that, because when we're thinking of great things to say to people as far as arguments, you've got it all arranged. You've got it logically arranged, and most of the times chronologically arranged. But I also, and I'm like Rick, I love to read. This was hard to get through, because one absolute atrocity after another, but you validate what we believe, what's right and wrong with this country. And I also, in the studio tonight, we have 6th District Congressional candidate Luke Messer, and Luke said he'd worked with you on an educational project before, David.
Yes.
But
Absolutely. Tell him hello.
He's right here.
He's right here.
Hey, Luke.
And he's welcome to chirp in whenever he wants to.
I'm just listening.
But this is, I absolutely had to look at the end of the book, David, to make sure, I want to make sure we had a good ending. And you do have a good ending if we do our part on November 6th and get this clown out of there.
Yeah, let me say this. I want to, in the brief time we have, I want to direct your viewer or listeners' attention to the war on energy. Obama's deliberately sabotaging our energy production, coal, natural gas, oil, and he's throwing billions of dollars away, and nuclear, I didn't mention nuclear, throwing billions of dollars away in these quixotic green energy programs. He's undermining our conventional and nuclear forces to a frightening level, while Red China and Russia are double-digit, increasing their defense budgets every year. Russia maybe not, but Russia's very aggressive. China's definitely increasing at double digits. But in the end, despite all this destructive policy behavior that Obama is engaging in, it is not too late. There is light at the end of the tunnel. But we conservatives, we Republicans have got to make sure that we call attention to exactly how bad this is, that we don't understate the gravity of the situation we face, that we're on the precipice of financial disaster, losing America as we know it, not being able to bequeath the America that we were bequeathed by our parents and their parents to our kids and their kids. If we allow this to happen, we are the most irresponsible stewards in the history of the world, because we were given in sacred trust the greatest nation in the history of the world, and we're about to throw it away. And I mean that so sincerely. So that the bottom line good news is, just as Ronald Reagan was able to dramatically turn around the malaise of Jimmy Carter, while we're much worse off now because of the debt situation we have and because of the incremental advance of liberalism the last 30 years since, we can turn it around. Ryan's plan is eminently doable, and it's doable in a way that's relatively painless. He doesn't jerk out entitlements out from under recipients. He preserves it for people 55 years and older in Medicare, and proposes the same for Social Security, and has a bunch of options for Medicaid that are mirrored on other programs that have worked. And he proposes tax reform that is critical to growth. People don't realize this, but part of the reason that our budget is unbalanced as radically as it is because we have a suppressed economy. Hundreds of billions of dollars are attributable to the loss in revenues that are a result of the suppressed economy. And so it's a twin set of policy prescriptions. That is, you have to have growth-oriented solutions, reduce taxes, simplify the tax code, at the same time as cutting spending radically. And then also, of course, the component of that is radical entitlement reform. And you will see, by the way, if you have Mitt Romney elected, committed to these policies and also the repeal of Obamacare, I predict you will see the unleashing.
Yes,
by the way, I forgot to mention, in addition to that, declaring a war against the war on energy and against the war on our national security. If he's committed to implementing all those reforms, you're going to see the private sector and entrepreneurship and American enterprise unleashed in an unprecedented way, and I predict a period of growth that's unprecedented for a while, because people are sitting on money because they're scared to death of the tsunami of regulations that awaits us with Obamacare, and that he has already amassed with his regulatory and tax programs. So I'm ultimately optimistic. I think people are seeing what a disaster and a train wreck this guy is, how destructive he is to this country, and how imperative it is that he be defeated.
David,
I have to believe that. Therefore, I have to say I believe it.
I would like to point out, for those that follow you, you were on with Lanny Davis on the radio and television quite a bit last week, and I would like to say that was the biggest mismatch since Julia Roberts and Lyle Lovett. But anyway,
David, this is Luke Messer. I just wanted to say, one, I agree with everything you say there. I think this next election obviously is the key. We've got to elect of these two choices. The choice is very clear. It's Romney. And I think in Indiana you would find in a miniature way that message you just unveiled is people are receptive to it because we've seen it here in this state under Governor Daniels. I mean, we have total state employees in 1970 levels and revenues that are down 4 or 5 years. We're down 27, 26 levels, and yet we're able to make those things happen in government and provide all the services that folks need at the same time.
Yes, and Governor Walker showed that what can happen when you refuse to cower, when you refuse to be intimidated by liberal bullies, and you stand up to them. You win resoundingly. Twice as many people identify as conservative than as liberal. Let's start acting like it. Let's quit acting like we're afraid of our shadow. Let's quit being intimidated by political correctness and being treated like we're the bigots and we accept it because we want to enforce our immigration laws or because we insist on people presenting their IDs when they vote to prove they're not dead or they're not voting 10 times. The outrage of us being called bigots or racist because we want to enforce the rule of law is something that cannot be countenanced, it cannot be tolerated. We have to hit back hard. I may sound a little bit like a radical, but I think it's time that we sound a little bit passionate in defending what is sacred, and that's this constitutional republic.
So was Sam Adams, though, David. This is Rick and Rick at Night. We're talking to David Limbaugh. We're the voice of liberty here in the Ohio River Valley. And I'd like to shout out to Harry's Stone Grill over there where 100 people are listening. We don't have a rush room. We got a Rick and Rick room. It's just only one, David.
Oh, I can hear him cheering. I can hear him cheering over there.
But one of the things I'm reading, I finished your book, but I'm reading as well as William L. Shire's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Pal, your dad was a P-51 jockey. My pop was a top turret gunner in B-24.
Yeah.
The parallels between now and 1930s, to me, you don't have to say it, are inescapable.
Well, every time you even make a statement like that, people accuse you of throwing the Nazi thing out and offending. No, all you're talking about is the power of propaganda and the gullibility of people. And what we need to remind people, if you're going to make that analogy, is that it can happen anywhere. Human nature is constant. That's what the Christian worldview, the Judeo-Christian worldview, recognizes, that human nature is what it is. And that's why this system of government is so unique, because it was designed in recognition of the fall of man and his ability to take advantage of other men unless properly restrained. So you invest government with sufficient power to secure ordered liberty, but at the same time you turn around and restrain that power by diffusing it and dividing it and separating it among three co-equal branches on the federal level and dividing it through a system of federalism on the national and state and local levels, so that these branches and levels of government can be pitted against each other in a competitive posture, so that not one branch or one level gets too powerful at the expense of the other, and the byproduct then is the greatest experiment in constitutional liberty the world has ever seen. And that's why we care about judges who are appointed who will uphold the Constitution according to its original meaning, because it's not just that we disagree on a policy basis with liberal judges on abortion and that type of thing. We understand that every time that a judge rewrites the Constitution, you take out another plank of the foundation of liberty, because it's important to preserve this balance, and it's important. And when the court gets to rewrite the laws as opposed to interpret the laws, then it's encroaching on the legislative function. And the legislative function is supposed to be performed by people who were duly elected, democratically elected, not by unappointable, life-tenured bureaucratic judges. So judges are great. They have their role as long as they know their place and don't get outside their constitutional scope.
Do you think Roberts did that a couple of weeks ago?
Absolutely. I don't think that's the way he viewed it. But and I have no proof other than what one journalist said, which is that he kind of cowered to the pressure. I think Roberts has been a golden boy who's always been praised for being such a perfect guy, straight A record, and doing everything right. And then he gets up there in the high seat and faces the overwhelming pressure of oppressive liberal hate, and he cowers. How would you like it? See, this is an example of how great my brother has been. He's taken arrows for 24 years from these vicious liberal liars and distorters and slanderers who mischaracterize and say him and mischaracterize his positions and his statements. And he's had to take that and fight back all these years. And here, Justice Roberts, when he takes this pressure from Obama and from the liberal media, he cowers. And by the way, that's giving him the benefit of the doubt, because to assume otherwise, I guess, is to say that something worse, like he's turned into a judicial activist. I don't know.
David?
I'm sure Roberts is a great guy. I don't mean to sound bitter against him, but it's very disappointing that we Republicans cannot seem to consistently appoint justices who will behave on the bench as they held themselves out as behaving before they got there.
David, this is Rick Berry again. You had a column about 3 weeks ago, and I think the title of it was, "Is Obama destroying our country on purpose?" And some of the things we said tonight would intimate that fact that it does appear to be what he's trying to do. Now, a lot of our listeners who maybe haven't been paying as much attention would say, well, why would the President of the United States want to destroy our economy? There is a reason, though. Can you give your take on that?
Well, what I've been saying is that I think it's reasonable for people to assume he's implementing a Cloward-Piven strategy, which is this strategy these professors came up with. They're socialists, radicals who say that you create enough chaos in an economy and a system that it will collapse, and then socialism can ride in, or a person like Obama can ride on his white horse and implement socialism. That's a reasonable interpretation based on Obama's obvious grudge against America and the pre-Obama America and the things he doesn't like about it. But I think rather than going that far and saying he's trying to destroy America, I think we rather just take him at face value. He said he wanted to fundamentally transform America. He wants to fundamentally transform it into something that is completely foreign to the American idea and the things that we consider wonderful, like American exceptionalism, entrepreneurship, and American greatness, and being the world's sole or one of the few superpowers. He's against all that. He thinks we consume too much of the world's resources. He thinks we've been an international imperialistic bully. He thinks we ought to defer in foreign policy to international bodies. And he thinks wealth ought to be redistributed, and he doesn't believe in profit to the extent that normal Americans do, because he thinks too much has been siphoned off the working class. It's almost right out of Karl Marx Das Kapital when he talks about the surplus, the profit, not sufficient profit, staying with the laborers and going to management. That's surplus value out of Marx. But regardless of whether you believe any of that, he's clearly implemented policies that require uncontrolled spending, and he's refusing to reform entitlements. As I said, but this bears repeating, his policies are hell-bent on taking us over the cliff to financial bankruptcy, and he won't stop. He's never even come up with a plan, not one plan. And the budgets that he's come up with all show trillion-dollar-plus deficits. Now, I'm talking about when he's on the chalkboard, not when Republicans have presented their ideas and this is some compromise. No, his budgets themselves, when he presents them, they're trillion-dollar deficits. And his stimulus, it costs $287,000 per job, according to the administration's figures. That, by the way, is myth. The truth is, he lost millions of jobs. He didn't save or create 3.5 million jobs. He lost millions of jobs. So Obama is destroying us financially, whether you think it's intentional or not. What he is doing is trying to change us fundamentally into something he might consider a utopia. We consider destruction. I say we. I trust you do too.
And his last budget, I believe, got voted down 414 to nothing. So there was some bipartisanship on his last budget.
And there darn well should be. Democrats have this country's demise on their hands. I can't believe the institutional corruption and hyper-partisanship of the Democratic Party in insisting on staying with Obama, America or not. I can't imagine the Democrats not being sent out on their ear in a dramatic landslide in both congressional and the presidential elections.
But, David, we need more elected officials that are supposedly on our side, speaking out with the passion you're speaking out. Every time you speak, I think, why don't we have more congressmen? And I think we've got one here tonight, a future one. But why are they not showing the passion?
When you get up there, for one reason, people who do show this passion are demonized. Look at Sarah Palin.
Oh, sure.
And they're treated like they're wild banshees. And the truth is, and I've lamented this often, when you tell the truth, this is one side benefit Obama has from this insanity. when someone accurately describes the effects of his policy agenda, it makes that person look extreme because the truth is extreme.
Yep.
Therefore, Obama can say, wait, I couldn't possibly do that which he had just done, because it's too ridiculously unbelievable, and yet it's true. And that's what we face. And why people aren't saying it, I think you get up there and there's a climate of just trying to get along. How many times have you heard in this nation that in this political climate, the goal is people want people to get along. They want bipartisan. No, they don't. Why do we care if somebody has hot toddies with somebody across the aisle? I want to kick their rear end out of Washington. The goal is to defeat them. It's not to hold hands with them.
David,
This isn't about them. It's about the country. It's about our kids.
Absolutely. Bravo to that, David.
So that's my thought. Other than that, I don't really have many strong.
If we just get a little passion out of you, we'd be all right.
There you go. Ted Cruz is showing some passion down there. I heard him on.
Down in Ohio.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yes.
I thought he was Texas. I don't know.
No, Texas. That's right. The guy downtown. I think,
down
and
Texas,
he did.
absolutely.
He is taking over the lead in the polls, I believe.
Yeah. So that's encouraging. I want conservatives to stand up. You know, even Liz Cheney defended Sarah Palin when her dad criticized her the other day. So we've got some people coming out in this, and I love Dick Cheney, and I don't want people to get that too down on him. He has a right to think and say what he wants. But so do I, and I want to say that I love Sarah Palin.
Well, you've got some company here in this room. I can tell you that for sure.
I got 6 polo shirts that say Palin 2012. It's a tad late. But,
Where do you guys live in Indiana, by the way? Or where do you operate out of?
Southeast Indiana. It's in between Louisville and Cincinnati on the Ohio River, David.
Well, that's where the J Corps used to be located. The radio outfit.
Yeah.
Tom knows about that.
The producer's just shaking his head up and down. Yes.
I remember dealing with those. They were good people. But anyway, that's a great area. So a lot of patriots apparently there. If you guys are any indication.
Hey, we're going to have a Tea Party thing on October 13th. If you're not doing anything.
Well, you never know.
There you go.
October 13th. That was my mother's birthday.
Is that right?
Yes.
It's what year was she born? This is an aside.
She was born in 1925, as a matter of fact, and she died in 2001.
Yeah.
Or 2000. Might have been 2000. 2000.
David, I got one quote that was not footnoted in your book, and it was at the end.
What'd I say?
No, it's a wonderful quote. At the end of it said, "God bless all you patriots fighting for the survival and continued greatness of this nation. God bless the most wonderful Constitution," end quote, "ever struck off at a given time by the brain and purpose of man. And God bless the American Republic." Where did the quote "ever struck off at a given time by the brain and purpose of man"? That was a
British Prime Minister William Gladstone.
Very good. Okay.
Even a Brit recognizes the superiority of the American system. And God bless you guys. I got my other radio interview coming in here.
Hey, we got you on for a half an hour anyway. We thought we were only going to have 15 minutes.
That worked out, so they didn't call. Maybe they're mad at me, but, life goes on.
Can we get you back on?
Yeah, well, let's do that. Give me a call. Thank you.
It's been an honor, Mr.
Thank you,
Limbaugh.
David.
You too. Thank you, guys.
God bless you, my friend. Wow. This is Rick and Rick at Night, the voice of liberty here in the Ohio River Valley, and I'm overwhelmed.
When I've heard him on TV and other radio shows, he's had a lot of inflection and enthusiasm, and he was just kind of monotone tonight. He didn't seem like he was really into it, did he?
Just try to poke him in the leg.
But that's why I love David. He's always like that. He just he truly believes what he believes in, and he's not afraid to learn. He's like his brother.
Yeah, it's a serious time for our country too, right?
Absolutely.
And people, if you don't understand that, you will. And again, we'd like to shout out to our friends over at the Harry's Stone Grill. We'll be over there in about a half an hour.
Great.
We're glad to have Luke Messer, who's running for 6th District Congressman, Mike Pence's old seat. It's a new district now, though. Can you describe where your district, it's up and down rather than across?
Well, yeah, it stretches essentially from Muncie and Winchester up in the central eastern portion of Indiana, comes down and takes in places like Henry County, which is Newcastle, Greenfield, Shelby County, where I happen to live, Bartholomew County. Then it comes down here to Madison on the river and colors in all 19 of those counties over to the Ohio state line. So geographically, it's separated by a couple hours, but frankly, as as a set of communities, I love the district. I grew up in Greensburg, which is one of these communities, Shelbyville, where my family lives. They're courthouse towns with ag and manufacturing-based economies, and they frankly have got an awful lot more in common than they have different, although they don't all watch the same television stations. That's the biggest thing that probably separates them. Some of them watch Louisville and some Cincinnati and some Indianapolis.
Well, Luke, I hope we have some of you and I's friends there in Shelbyville listening to us tonight.
Yeah,
I put the word out to Carmody, so Carmody, you better be listening
that's right.
out there.
Rick, you've got a lot of. One thing I was going to tell you too, since we had David on, is where I actually first met him. He had gotten involved in trying to bring the issue he and I worked on, and Rick, with your son at Hillsdale, you'll appreciate this, but is that by and large, most universities in America today have a strong liberal bias in their hiring processes, and so we were working on some suggestions that would essentially get the universities in our state to pledge that they would not use liberal ideology. The wording was either ideology, liberal or conservative, in their hiring practices, because frankly right now, to the extent they use it, and most of them do, they're inordinately hiring liberals. And so that's unfortunate, because you've got a generation of kids, if you're not going to Hillsdale College, that are being indoctrinated by the left throughout the course of their studies, often worried that they have to incorporate those philosophies in their papers if they want to get decent grades, and all the other that comes with that. We weren't going to mandate that they were going to do that. We're just going to ask them, as part of the multiple $1 billion they receive from the state, to pledge that they wouldn't use liberal ideology in their hiring processes. You might be amazed that as soon as we filed a bill that suggested